over it to find notes, or if somebody wants to watch it later, the link should be available online, or at least in this case, I put it in the minutes for people to look at. If that's not a good place, we can discuss that. So there's a raise hand button under reactions. So you can use that. If you just your camera's on, you can just raise your hand and perhaps we'll see it. And then, so the first item after that is the approval of the minutes from the last meeting, and I sent those out. And I'm wondering if anyone has any comments on the minutes that were sent out.
They looked fine to me.
Okay. And we're still. All right. So
to approve.
All
I
right.
make a motion to approve.
I second that.
All right. All in favor?
Hi.
All right. Does anyone oppose to the minutes? Okay. And I see we have Jeru Banda with us. Can you introduce yourself to the meeting attendees?
Hello, good evening. I'm Jeru Bande. I'm the Regional Director for Eastern Montgomery County Government.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so far all we've done is approve the minutes from last week, so you haven't missed anything yet. And so I want to close the minutes and look at try to shuffle through documents here. So are there any changes to the agenda? Okay, so let's continue then. So discussion items is the big item today is the discussion of an adoption of the rules of procedure, which were sent out a couple weeks ago. And I believe Amy was to make a shared Google Doc so they could be discussed in comments. Now, I did not have a link to the shared Google Doc, so I do not know the progress of that effort. So Amy, can you let us know what's going on with that?
I can share, once I close all of my other windows, because I'm at work, I can share on my screen. Okay. All right, tell me if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay. So I haven't looked at it since the other night. There are just a few text edits. Okay, so I had a comment in this section on the role of the Implementation Advisory Committee, where I asked a question on whether there's a process where development applications submitted can be automatically routed to the committee. How would that mechanistically happen? And then in addition to that, is there, if there's any content or awareness of pre-submittal meetings, if there's a way for that to get to us as well? Because I think that's how GOCA operates. And then Kathleen had a response that she thinks that's how the only town, oh, maybe I'm wrong in the word GOCA, only Town Center Advisory Committee.
Yes, I believe that's the same thing with Bethesda as well.
Okay, so the first part of that, I'll have to ask our E-plans is the system used for routing plans through the system. And there are outside advisories that get reviews, but they have specific people assigned to do that work. And certain applications get routed their way. I'm not aware of any civic group that has a similar setup. I could ask Neil Bronstein is the supervisor in charge of that. I can ask Neil if this is something that there's any sort of precedent or even capability. But for now, it's just going to have to go through someone like me notifying you when I'm made aware of an application. So as far as only Town Center Advisory Committee, they are, again, they're informed by me because I'm the liaison to that group. So anytime we're going to have a meeting with them, I make inquiries to see if we've gotten anything new, even before submittals, and whatever can be made public, I do, but there's no formal process.
Okay. I just captured that note. Any other questions from folks on that section?
If I might, I think I could go along with the approach that seems to obtain for the Olney. I think if the planning staff routinely keep the advisory committee closely informed of new proposals at an early stage, then that would suffice to me, rather than necessarily an automaticity to it, because they may also need to provide not just the planning, the proposal as it is, but perhaps some other context that we might not be aware of. So I think it's useful that we have that, but at least an assurance that it is provided early to the advisory committee, and I would say that would suffice. That's my take on it, really.
Okay. And Jamie, I guess on the pre-submittal part of things, like there's the things that are officially submitted, but then there's, pre-submittal conversations that might happen as well. Is there a way for awareness to happen along those lines? Is that something you also do for the Olney process?
Yeah, I'd like to second that, because in speaking to Helene Rubenstein and the folks in Bethesda, they really stress that really smooth the road and help to build a solid team if everybody was working together from the beginning.
Yeah, I'm still trying to find out at work when something needs to remain confidential between us and an applicant. So I don't have a good answer for you right now, other than to say that as soon as I know something that I can say, I will say it.
Yeah, I'll just echo that. We can definitely, we'll find out for sure, but we can definitely, for the most part, let people know if we are meeting, with pre-submittal application meetings and things like that. But sometimes the applicant is just literally just asking about the process and, can they do something or not? They're just, finding answers.
Donald, could you explain what pre-submittal application
Sure. So
means?
sometimes before an applicant submits something, they'll just, do fact-finding missions and just trying to see what process they have to go through. Is something legal? Is this, what can they do? What's the advice? What has happened before in the past? Now, sometimes, this can be, their attempt to try to work out something before the plan. But sometimes they're just literally just asking questions of, what can be done? What are the hurdles? What are the red flags?
I guess what I think in my mind the issue goes back to what I had said at the earlier time, when there may be market sensitivities that has to be balanced with the transparency goal of this committee, that it fits in the broader context of whatever legal provisions this committee operates under, and also the planning office. Balancing those two things is quite sensitive, and I appreciate that the planning staff have to balance. An investor may be making market sensitive requests or for information that they may not yet be prepared to, or willing to, or wish that it be disclosed, given they're taking risks. So I think I could see where this there's a need for some judgment in the middle and also for it to be framed or contextualized by whatever legal provisions there are that the planning committee itself, planning office operates under. So I don't know. Those are some reflections.
I think most of the time, the people that are meeting with us, they already own a property, they're interested in developing it, and they might not mind if we ask, can we share this information? But if somebody's trying to purchase a property, then they may not want that conversation to affect the price they might pay for it. So we can't always say everything. So yeah, I mean, I know that it's vague to say early in the process, but I felt like it was about as specific as we could get.
So does that address your questions, Kathleen? I see you had some additional notes in the same section.
Yeah, I mean, it's the last sentence just made me feel like we're no different than any individual. So I was just wondering there how our role or our ability to provide information or input to the planning board, how that's different from an individual. Because the way this is written, looks like it's just the same.
Well, it's the same, but it has more weight. So the reviewer of the plan would take it under advisement with a lot more. You would just have more weight behind it, and the planning board itself would be more encouraged by a discussion from the advisory committee than if it's just one person voicing an opinion.
Do you think we should, I'm sorry, don't you think that word may should be changed? You know, I expect that the committee will have a view on the project, right? Whether it says it doesn't like it or it is not consistent with the plan, or it seems to be consistent, or it's consistent to some extent, and however it has some questions or concerns that planning staff may consider in the approval process. But it's not a may. I think
Is it a should? Is it a should or a shall?
It should. It should.
I'm okay with a should. How do other people feel?
Yeah,
I can't see anybody, by the way, so people feel good.
Qualified yea or nay. Yeah. Sorry.
Anybody against the word should? If you feel strongly, just speak out.
I agree to should.
And is encouraged to testify? Is that fine at the same time?
Well, I would think that they, I mean, again, back to what Mr. Tharkar was saying, it seems like we want to testify.
So is it expected to testify?
Maybe encouraged is the right word, but it seems like, we probably would want to. So.
I'm okay with encouraged because there might be like, I don't know, maybe there would minor things where the letter is sufficient and it doesn't require time out of a testimony, but.
Nadine, you've got your hand up. And your mute button on.
That was to agree.
Oh, okay.
With that before, but we could put encouraged slash encouraged and or to discuss, to testify, encouraged to.
I'm okay with encouraged.
Well, what if we said instead of encouraged and may testify at public hearings? Maybe that's no different. I don't know. I'm going to be quiet.
I'm good with encouraged. I don't know.
Or something along the line that if it deems it necessary, something, if it's in its judgment, you want to leave the committee the authority to make the determination as to whether it wishes to testify on a subject matter or an issue.
Encouraged as needed. Encouraged as needed.
Yeah. As in its, yeah. Where it, or at the end, you could say where it deems it necessary. Although that's probably just a given. Anyway, I leave.
Okay.
I should say by the committee. Being necessary for us. Okay. All right. I feel like I'm at work with the wordsmithing.
All right. Well, get rid of the comma before when. There you go.
Okay. Next section where there were comments, and I'm only going to the sections where there's comments. Committee shall elect 2 officers, 1 member to serve as chair, 1 to serve as vice chair secretary. Officers may serve no more than 3 sequential terms. I figured sequential rather than concurrent.
Oh yeah, that concurrent was wrong.
Kathleen had a comment on, is there a nomination process?
Only if you guys add one here. I mean, obviously there should be one. I guess Jeru has his hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question. If you could just go back to the statement we just corrected. As part of the application for development, obviously there's a requirement for public input. So at those public meetings, is that different just in terms of any members of this committee participating there as a regular citizen, or would membership of this committee preclude them from participating in that community-wide public input process?
If I might quickly just say something on that, Nadine. I recall that somewhere later on in the document, it speaks to the importance of members of the committee being able to speak separately from what the committee may have decided. But it must be made clear that they are speaking, this is in public meetings, that they are speaking on their own behalf. And I think it's somewhere there. I remember seeing. So I think it has some relevance in this on this issue. That's a thought.
I think it's at the end.
Yeah.
It's not that far. Other members of the committee should speak as individual citizens and not as representative of the committee. So I guess that basically answers the question. Right? The chair makes official statements and anybody else is speaking as an individual citizen.
No, but this is about press, like public statements.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
The
Submission of
public
comments.
input process as part of the planning process is a little different because you're impacting the policy and or the conditions that's applicable as part of the application process.
Yeah.
But may I just say, I could see where you could put a qualifier on the statement that's already there, to say not just with respect to press conferences, but in other respects, in other such fora. But we already is the question necessarily a major one, to the extent that there are other points in this procedure which speaks to the how a majority view of the committee gets collected and gets transferred as representing the views of the committee as a whole to the planning body, and also it allows for minority views to be submitted. So in a sense, it already has that. So if someone has a view which might be different from what the committee has collectively decided, their views, I would assume, would be part of that minority view. So in a
Yeah.
sense, it's somewhat already captured, but I don't know if it's sufficiently comprehensive based on others' perspective.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment about this discussion. Kathleen had a good comment earlier about how does this separate us from an individual, right? This committee. If we don't speak as a single voice, we will have zero credibility and zero clout in front of the county, because the county is looking at us to say, you've been selected, you know, that we reached out to the community, asked people to submit their resume and request to join this committee. So they're looking towards us as the single voice of the community. So if we put in this language that says, well, yeah, we're going to submit our official statement, but then individually we can go and make comments that might contradict the committee, all of a sudden our credibility is gone and we have zero clout, and they'll treat us just like individuals. So we have to be very, very careful, and we have to make a decision that this committee is going to come out with our recommendation, and we stand behind it.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I can't tell who's speaking.
Paul Mendes.
Okay, oh, your face is obscured. I can't
Oh,
see.
sorry. So we have to be very careful
Could
about
I just
discussions, because they'll will quickly undermine our credibility and clout.
I agree with that. In fact, I was waiting for us to get to it, but that is what I think bothers me, and I could see that it bothers a few other folks based on their comments in the document. It has to do with when there's a tie in the vote. It says that 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 the both sides would present the, in meeting minutes and letters to the board. You know what the disparate views are. But to me, to the extent that the preceding point, and I'm sorry I have to go to this all the way forward, but already there is a provision that says opinions and concerns of significant minority, at least 3 of the 10 members, should be included in meeting minutes and letters to the planning department. That's already there. So you have the captured the minority view. So why is there a need for us to accept a tie? If you're going to have minority views already captured, I think you should have a way to break such a tie, and for the position of the committee, of the majority of the committee as a whole, be carried forward, even if you have the minority views. So I think it kind of goes to what was being pointed out, that you really need to have credibility in what you're saying. In the committee, and be clear that the committee is speaking
Wouldn't
as
that
one voice.
wouldn't that actually then points to a bigger issue? The word advisory, uh, in just in meaning, as it's attached to a process where a higher body makes a final decision, is the role of this committee to advise, or in recommending when you vote, the vote may be, let's say, a year in favor of a project. Wouldn't the advisory body also have some level of responsibility to relay the other minority voices? Since we represent the community, should that advisory function be inclusive in that advisory statement to, let's say, a planning board?
It will
So
be
that's
based on
always
what's
been a
there.
challenge for advisory committees throughout the county in terms of what the roles are. Do you just vote on everything, or do you assess the viewpoints of the communities and package it in such a way that you are informing the decision-making body in terms of the different viewpoints on that application or in that matter?
It provides that, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
saying it provides that because it says opinion and concerns of a significant minority, at least 3 of the 10 members, should also be included in meeting minutes and letters to the planning board. So it does already allow you to capture minority views. The issue I had was even more. Having had that, why would you, if you have a tie, not have a way in which you break that tie, and rather have the two sides of that tie be sent forward equally? I think you should have a way to break that tie. So the chairman should probably have a super. What do you
we
call
don't
it?
need to break the tie.
Yeah.
Its role is advisory. Is there a need to break a tie except to say to the planning board on this particular issue when it was brought to discussion and an eventual vote was made? From that exercise, the group was equally divided. Does that define the role, the actual role of this committee?
I agree. I think a tie in itself is significant to show that there's a split. It's a meaningful result that doesn't necessarily need to be broken into a majority minority.
Yeah, I'm okay with having a tie.
Okay, that's fine with me. I just felt that we should lock ourselves in a room and come out with a view one way or the other. You know?
I admire the commitment to decision making.
Yeah, it's just if you're an advisory body, that's the, I guess, the key word there. You provide advice too. So that just kind of opens up a whole
Yeah, but
world in
if
terms
you're
of
an
process.
advisory body, I'm sorry to say, if you are an advisory body, the word body means you are one, yeah? And this is saying you are two, possibly, and you can allow for that. And I don't like that. Especially if you have a way in which you show the minority views already. So I would say, you know, in my judgment, there should be a way in you break. In my judgment, in legislation of institutions that I've worked on, there is a tiebreaker in terms of the chairman having that additional vote. That's how I see it in the legislation of institutions I've worked on. And they are advisory to governments. They are not necessarily, you know, determining.
I mean, in practicality, the only way you can prevent a tie is that you have an uneven number of people on the advisory board. That's the only way you take a tie off the table. Other than that, you'll go
You
down
give
a
the
rabbit
chairman
hole.
a second. You give the chairman a tiebreaker. Governors have that incentive.
I guess maybe we can take a vote on how many people feel strongly about not having the ability to do a tie. Raise your hand. And I can't see anybody, so FYI. Should I go back to my screen?
Not having a tie?
Exactly. How many people feel strongly that we
If
could
that's
not
a majority view,
have a
I'm
tie?
okay with it. Honestly, I'm just trying to give you my thought on it. Yeah, I can live with it if others, as a whole, think otherwise. Yeah.
So we've got
Amy,
3. Go ahead.
repeat. Could you repeat the question, please?
How many people are anti-tie? Just to make it really simple.
My hand is up for tie.
Does that mean that a tie is not possible, or
We have
that
to
you're,
have a majority vote.
yep. So what? Okay, so there has to be a majority vote if you raise your hand. But what
Yes.
happens if there's not? What happens when
There-
there is a tie?
If there is a tie, we're just putting both of those viewpoints forward.
Well, that's what it already says.
Well,
Right. This
There's
is
that.
Kathleen, and my,
So you're voting to approve the language as written.
yeah, what are we doing?
I think we
who's
should
okay with
reword it,
language
if
as
you don't
written?
mind, so that it fits for the minority voice as well. It just seems weird that we would have it to seem like it's too different, you know, like because they over there they say this and we disagree. The minority, we disagree with the minority. It can go either way. I think that we should include it and figure out a way to just word it?
So you're good with how it is, or you think it should be edited?
Edit it. I think
That we should
edit.
reach a majority. We should never have a tie.
Currently, it allows for both, right?
Exactly. I'm okay with leaving the language as is. That's my position. But
Which would allow minority voice. I
allow
believe.
minority voice and also
Yes.
allow a tie.
Right.
Yeah, if I also may be a little bit candid here, traditionally planning processes does not involve in larger capacity communities, people who are mostly impacted by planning decision. So historically, when we do this, is most of us who are in the system, know the process, have the interests, and then have the time when those processes are being discussed. We have the ability to go have input. But by and large, so even when we use the word minority voice, is it just amount us are in here, or we're talking about the minority out there whose lives are impacted by planning decision, whether it's just land use related or any other planning related issues. So I just want to throw that out there. It's a challenge, even as we look at Thrive 2050, in terms of some of the challenges the county has been faced with, and the length of time is really taken to discuss, quote, the community input aspects of the approval of Thrive 2050. I just want to throw it out there just for food for thought.
If I could interject,
I think we're discussing the,
having been on the other side of this for many years, it is useful that if there's a tie, that the governing body or decision-making body does understand that there is a split in the community.
Yeah, okay.
Which is the tie indicates something other than a minority vote or feeling, which says, well, the majority of the community feels for A, the minority wants another position. That is a more definitive statement. But the decision-making body should always know that there is a split in the community, rather than thinking that there is no sense of where they want to go.
And if I believe that's what the wording gives us now.
Correct.
like I said, I can go along with it. It's not our preference, but if others are in favor of it, it's okay.
All in favor of leaving the language as is, raise your hand.
How are we raising our hand? Mine is not
Go to the
working.
reactions.
I know, but it doesn't work. So
well, you can physically raise your hand.
my
Do
hand
it
is
old
up.
school.
If there's any question.
1, 2, 3, 4. There are five of us with hands raised. Hey, that's a tie.
Oh, no, here we go.
Let's stay in this room
Mike,
and
did you
hash
count
it out.
mine, Amy?
There's
I did.
there's only 9 people here today, so
Oh, well.
ask for those to oppose to raise their hands. You won't get 5.
Okay, well, I have to bring all the hands down, including my own.
I'm sorry. Hi, this is Jessica Sadar. I just joined.
Oh, she is here.
I had a meeting that ran. Yeah, I had a meeting that ran over. I'm so sorry. And I can't read the text right now, but I will say that I agreed with that last point. So I don't know which one that would be with, but that I think that the minority, whatever the minority vote is on something, should be reflected in the minutes. So I don't know if I'm raising my hand or not, but.
And do you feel that if there is a tie, that we need to work until we break the tie.
I think that we could come to some agreement. Maybe somebody needs to get somewhere. Yeah, I agree with that. That if there's a tie, we should find a compromise.
So
Okay.
all those who think we should find ways to break a tie, raise your hand.
My hand is up.
Okay. So we had 5 versus
It
2.
forces you to have creativity in solutions. You know, it's basically saying, you know, we may be stuck on this way or that way, but let's find a way in which we propose collectively and could compromise, as she said, on how it could work, and we all
Yeah,
could agree on.
I
or
don't
the majority.
disagree, though our voting just did 5 with leaving it as is and 2 with changing it. So
and I wanted to say that I've seen the Rustic Roads Advisory Committee has sometimes just said, you know, they've submitted something that say we don't have an opinion on this matter because they voted on something and it was 3-3 or something like that.
okay.
They have
Or,
7
no,
people.
but
But they're not
it
there.
wouldn't be that you don't have an opinion on it. It will be that you have strong opinions on it. You have a divided view on it.
Oh yeah, but the committee. What would you say though? How would you word something to the planning board when it's a tie?
You would say, look, you would say to the planning board that the committee is divided on this, and people have strong views. One, in this respect, they feel here are the arguments, and in this other respect, here are the arguments, and we were unable to come to an agreement. But you need to bear these divergent views in mind as you go forward in considering this project. That's how you would have to do it.
So that sort of sounds like describing a tie.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's how you would probably describe it. But I don't quite like it. But I like I say, you know, if that's the general view, it's okay.
I mean, we could add like the committee should work to get to a majority vote.
It seems just
And
Kathleen,
failing which, yes, I agree.
I don't agree. I mean,
I don't either. I thought we just took a vote and agreed to keep
We
it.
did.
I'd make a motion
Trying
that
to
we
be
move
collaborative.
on.
I second that.
Yeah, we
Okay.
have a lot to do.
All right, so back up to sequential terms, yada yada. We already, oh sorry, oh now it's gonna freaking, whenever I click on a comment, it's gonna bring me up to wherever that comment is. I made a comment somewhere in here on, it was the,
Amy,
yes,
the sentence we were looking at, the one right above it, the word address should have ED added.
the
This,
one all the way up,
yeah, the sentence we were looking at.
this one?
No, address, no, no, not that. We were talking about the,
That one's probably all the way down at the bottom.
yeah. It was the page that was
We'll get
up.
there.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, so we talked about sequential terms.
You had added through request of
Oh,
committee
through
members.
request, yeah. The committee will meet at the discretion of the chair of the committee through the request of the committee members or at the recommendation of planning staff. So this is sort of like, you know, if there's a committee member who feels strongly that we should be meeting, they can make that request to meet. I don't know if anybody cares strongly about that. Otherwise, the poor chair is the one that's deciding everything.
Should we have like
Normally,
a minority of committee members so that it's not any of 10 at any time can call meetings?
Yeah, well, that's fair.
there's the role of,
Maybe three members.
okay, yeah.
How would you come to that consensus that there needs to be a meeting then?
I guess you could discuss it through email or phone
Yeah.
calls and say,
Email
"Here,
amongst
three of
ourselves.
us are requesting a meeting."
Yeah.
But anybody can call the chair and say, "I'd like to have a meeting," and the meeting, if the chair agrees, the chair will say, "All right, let's have a meeting."
We're not
Nadine?
going to have a set meeting date once a month. And if we need to have the meeting, we'll have it. And if we don't, we won't. Is that a possibility, or is that a solution? So at least you would have something on your calendar if it's, and if it's needed, we would meet.
Well, the other committees I'm on, usually at the last meeting of a year, they'll say, let's look at our calendars and pick our meetings for next year. There's usually the first, second, third, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever it is, every other month. Some meet only 5 months. They skip summer, skip Christmas, whatever it is, whatever holiday. So you could say, here's the potential meeting dates just to put on your calendars. I think once a month is probably too often based on the other groups I've been with, given the size of Ashton.
Yeah, I like that. I think, Nadine, I like what you're suggesting, though. Maybe it's, we come up with a rough schedule to what Jamie's suggesting versus having it being very prescriptively written in here that then folks have to follow in the future.
I was thinking that we probably would have to work around Jamie's schedule, since he has, a lot of moving parts and very similar meetings that probably take place in the evenings like this. So maybe he could make some suggestions to us. And
my only suggestion is don't do it the fourth week of the month, because that's when all my other groups seem to meet.
Right. See, that's what I mean.
First, second, third, they're all fine.
So are you okay, Nadine, if we leave it as is, but we try to, come up with like a rough calendar?
Maybe just put a sentence after at least once a year saying, or the time and location of meeting, whatever, will be decided. I don't know. Or we could leave it like it is.
Yeah, I oversee lots of boards and committees. It's always best with this many folks, just as, we agree on a date, like every other month, the second Tuesday, and, 1 hour, 2 hours. Then that, allows everyone to have it on their calendars. And so there's no conflict. Anything else really complicates it, just from my own experience.
But do we need to really decide that here?
I don't think so.
This is still new, so.
No, we could send out a doc and just say, is this, what's the best day for you? Every other month, the third Monday or Tuesday at 7:30, and majority will rule.
Yep. Okay. Okay. So
yeah, I really liked when Jamie did that the first time, and we had to pick the date and the time that worked well for the majority. Thought that was nice.
Okay. So next comment, ensure the discussion is on top. This is, I think, under what the chair is in charge of. So ensure the discussion is on topic, productive, and professional. They will testify at public hearings on behalf of the committee where that and I added where that testimony has been reviewed and agreed upon by a majority of the committee prior. I guess it sort of follows the rules that are below around, you know, if it's a tie, they're mentioning that. If it's a majority, they're mentioning that, I guess, with the minority opinion added in as well as part of the testimony. I just wanted to make sure that, like, whatever the chair is saying, like, the rest of the committee is aware of what the chair is saying.
Right, it's
Absolutely.
speaking for the committee, yes.
Who is authorized to speak on behalf of this committee?
Well, they're saying
Or
the
who-
chair.
I'm sorry?
This is saying the chair of the committee will provide, blah, blah, and these are all the things the chair is doing, including testifying at public hearings on behalf of the committee.
Wouldn't the language be specific to that? If the chair is the authorized, you know, is the person authorized to speak on behalf of this body or something to that effect, just to be very, very straight up. That's what most committees do. Doesn't leave any ambiguity.
So you're just saying reiterate the chair will?
No, and that's for discussions, you know, if the group, yeah.
I think it's pretty clear because all these bullets are talking about what the chairperson is going to be responsible for.
Yeah.
And that's stated above. You'll see right there, the chair shall, and then it's got the
They
bullet
do
point.
this, they do that, they do that, this. I don't know why this is a sub.
Yes, just the formatting's weird, right? It's not supposed to be sub-bulleted under the previous one.
Change that.
Okay, I see that. Okay, I see your point. Yeah.
I don't know how to outdent on this, but I'm afraid I'll mess it up further if I try to fix the formatting. They serve a 1-year term. The committee should also select one member to serve as vice chair secretary. Now, this was one of my suggestions on, do we break up the vice chair and the secretary into 2 roles? I just feel like, you know, taking minutes, like all of this is being recorded, right? And God bless you, Jamie, like we'll then go back and pull some minutes out of it. But
Yeah, let me
I
also
just feel
ask
like
a
taking
legal
minutes is a lot.
Legal question, Jamie. Just in terms of the public open meeting law, would the recordings of these meetings suffice the legal requirements, and or would it be augmented by the
I think the recording suffices, but I don't think that it's it's not very helpful for quickly reviewing what was discussed and what decisions were made.
Okay, I'm just looking at this role of the secretary, you know, taking minutes or summary of the discussions in addition to the recordings.
Yeah, I actually took the certification last week. And from what I recall, as long as you're consistent in how you capture meaning notes, you're in compliance. So if you consistently capture it through recording, you're in compliance. Even though it might be cumbersome, you're still in compliance.
Yeah, okay. That's well. Okay.
But you just have
I reviewed it as well. And I agree with that. That says that pretty clearly in the 62-page manual.
For having a meeting.
Are the minutes going to be posted? This is Kathleen. Is the minutes going to be posted?
Yeah, it should be posted. I think, well, Jamie can answer this, but I think there's a standard part on the website where they'll post a link to this recording.
So now that you have approved the minutes from last meeting, I'm going to post them tomorrow on the website. But, you know, theoretically, I could post a link to the meeting for anybody to watch it and not worry about minutes at all. And I find it difficult to quickly review an hour-and-a-half long meeting to see what was discussed.
Right. That's my point, is that it seems like while you can do it both ways, and I think there's value in doing it both ways, I think for posting on the website, capturing the salient points and any specific decisions that were made would be probably most helpful to the community or others that are trying to figure out what came out of the meeting. That's
and the training you all mentioned, did it mention how long these minutes or the recordings need to be kept? Is it by planning staff? And if there's a FOIL request, how does process? Because with time you deal with land use issues, planning issues, those are potential issues that may come up.
Isn't that something that the planning body would take up? It's not so much that the advisory committee needs to worry about. It's more like a matter that the planning body body may need to keep a record of all of these historical entities and what happened and so forth. So that it's not really the advisory committee.
Yeah. Well, it's important as advisory committees to the planning, we are technically tied to the planning from a legal standpoint. So
I have a small suggestion, which if I might just ask, on the responsibilities of the chair, just a qualifier I'd like to add. If you could just go back up a bit there for me, Amy, where it says ensure meeting agenda and relevant documents are circulated to the members. Could I suggest that just a small qualifier be added at the end, which says something on a timely basis? It's kind of important that minutes and agenda things get to folks, ahead of meetings. So far, it has happened, but I could see where these things, in my experience, sometimes can present challenges.
Yeah, I wonder if also for that, if like the secretary could, if we do break up the chair and the vice chair and the secretary, if the secretary could be backup for that. I just feel like this is a lot to put on the chair. And it seems like maybe the burden could be shifted over to if there's a vice chair and a secretary, that division
Right.
would be better.
I think that's the way they do it in Alney. They have it split up too.
Yeah. So
can we change the wording for that? Because if the co-chair, vice chair has to take over for the chair, who's going to take the notes? So it doesn't make any sense not to have it split.
Yeah.
I make a motion that we add the secretary as a separate.
I second.
I obviously third since I suggested.
My little hand won't work.
Does anybody feel differently?
At practical level, then, am I hearing that the bullet point that speaks to ensure meeting agenda and relevant documents are circulated to members on a timely basis, that would shift down to the responsibility of the secretary?
I think so. Unless, I mean, that seems like a secretary kind of job.
Yeah, and I would agree with it. I'm just asking if that's the decision.
Yeah.
Or that's the.
Does anybody feel differently?
And Joe, is if you establish a vice chair separately, you have to sort of figure out what is the responsibility of the vice chair.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, in my mind, they're backing up for the chair when the chair can't do those things, which could certainly happen with schedules, etc.
Yeah, I mean, usually when you have a vice chair or vice president, the president or the chairman of the board can delegate their responsibilities to the vice chair.
Yeah.
So if they get overloaded, they have the authority to delegate to the vice chair their responsibilities.
And in some committees, they actually have the vice chair is the next chair. And I'm not saying necessarily to do it that way, but that's also, it's sort of like the vice chair is a chair in training.
I'm
Are you
okay with
with
that.
accepting any delegated tasks from the chair? Okay. Sounds like we're good there. Additional committee processes. Majority of the committee is 6 of 10 members. Eligible decision makers are those individuals that have been formally appointed by the planning board. So basically, that's us. I think, Nadine, you had a question on that. And then getting down to
I don't
financial.
I don't
Oh, go ahead.
understand. I don't understand the bullet point.
This
It
one?
seems to be it's redundant. Isn't the
It's
whole
just to say
committee?
that only the committee members have an opinion and have a vote. And
Yeah.
if
Like,
you're
because it's
just
an
a
open
guest,
forum, you could have other people in here.
Right, I just needed clarification on that. Thank you.
Yeah. Is there anybody else formally appointed by the planning board who's like not the committee members? I don't think so. Like, I know we've got other folks, you know, that are helping with this process, but they're not necessarily considered part of the quorum, etc. Okay, so affiliation of committee members with a financial interest. Those with direct involvement in an item up for discussion should be noted in the discussion and any correspondence. And then here, I think Nadine adding, you know, recusing themselves of those proceedings. So I guess the question is, if you've got financial interest or direct involvement, you know, I don't know. You're the ones pouring the sidewalks. Should you recuse yourself?
I agree with Nadine. If you have a conflict of interest or a potential conflict of interest, you should not be. You should declare it, and you should not be involved in the discussion on that particular topic or issue.
Well, as the first person to respond to Nadine, I'll say I think it's incredibly important to know the viewpoints and the perspectives of those who do have a financial or direct involvement in the process. However, they must be upfront about it and fully disclose it. But I think it's important to have all parties, all beneficiaries involved in the discussion, so that we're not just making an opinion without the insight and perspective of others. However, if you want to preclude them voting, I don't really have an opinion about that. But I think everyone's voice at least should be heard.
Yeah, I agree with that. It shouldn't be from the proceedings.
That's a very smart thought. So from a practical point of view, this bullet point could be qualified to take on board what Julia just said. I think that was Julia, where you say they could be involved in the discussion, but not in a voting, in making a voting decision on the issue. Is that what you're trying to say, Julia?
Yeah, I don't really have a strong preference as to whether they can vote or not. Just a strong preference that they're allowed to participate in the discussion.
Yeah, I like the idea of them participating in the discussion but not voting.
Right. I think that's the normal protocol in committees.
Well, if anyone feels strongly about not including this vote language, let me know. Okay. Next bullet, non-members are expected to have a chance to voice their opinions during discussions prior to any vote. So I guess one of the questions from Nadine is submitting, or one of the comments, non-members should submit a request for comment or questions similar to citizen participation in planning board hearings, which could be addressed at the end of the committee's proceedings in 3-minute intervals. So Nadine, it sounds like just trying to make it more organized.
Yes, and using the template that the board follows. Otherwise, we really want people to participate, but if it could be in an organized fashion, and questions and answers perhaps at the end, and opinions at the end, and people would sign up for it. Or as the meeting as people chime into the meeting, they could put in the chat box, I'd like to offer a question at the end. Perhaps that could be something the vice chair could kind of coordinate.
My thought on this is I support what Nadine is getting at, the thrust of what she's saying. And we could refine it more, but I agree with it. But I also want to keep in mind what someone earlier pointed out, that this committee, what makes this committee different from an individual out there who wants to have their say on an issue. And this committee was appointed based on certain criteria. It therefore must have its own authority in how it manages its process and its decision making. And that must be necessarily different from just simply allowing everyone to come and say what they want. Because if you do that, then to me, the committee doesn't have an elevated role that makes it separate. And so in that sense, I agree that you have to have interventions from others who are not members, but you also need to manage it and within a prescribed time at the end of the agenda of discussions, which I think is what Nadine kind of suggested.
So I agree. My one question is, right now it's written as like during the discussion prior to any vote, and then Nadine's added like at the end of the committee's proceedings in 3-minute intervals. So just thinking like logistically, we're talking through multiple topics, we're voting on multiple topics. But yet if like the comment from citizens isn't until the very end, that's potentially after we voted. Or is it we have this free-flowing discussion, we allow people to make comments, and then we hold everything for a vote? Anything that needs to be voted on is all voted on at the end.
It seems like, I mean, I think, thinking back to the planning board, it seems like sometimes and Jamie, I was going to ask you for, anything that you can provide in terms of how others handle this. Because sometimes it seems like the planning board allows public testimony before they actually deliberate, but I could be wrong. So Jamie, how did they do it?
Yeah, before they deliberate, they have, a list of people who have signed up to testify, but I don't know if this group needs to get that formal with people submitting. They don't know what comments they're going to have until they've listened to you guys talk about something. So I would just, I think it was kind of simple before, just people can voice their opinions. The chair can tell them, okay, we've heard enough from you. Let's go on to the next person.
Well, it seems to me like there needs to be something a little bit more than is there, because I think sometimes it's hard for the chairman to be, if you've got some people that are very opinionated. So the chair, I mean, if the chair is comfortable doing that, I guess that's fine, but it just seemed like it needed a little more structure to it. Because there are aspects of this plan that there are strong feelings within the community. And so if people can just show up and say whatever they want, it could become a little bit of a long and cumbersome meeting.
If I might say, the risk as I see it, one of the big risks, and this is just a prior judgment, is that people may use the forum of this committee to revisit certain assumptions in the plan. Which the plan is already decided. It's something that we are playing a role to help with its implementation and projects consistent with it. Is not to revisit whether or not it should have or could have, ought to have done this or that. I mean, and that to me is going to be one of the issues that can open up can of worms if you have a lot of folks trying to go back to some kind of interest group view on certain issues, which may not have been sufficiently captured or which have emerged and are not in the plan and so forth. So I think that's something that you really want to be guarded about and trying to be able to manage such meetings very carefully.
If I may suggest, we may just not really know how this committee is going to look and how our meetings are going to be, which is why I added that comment about we should have something in place for changing the rules. So if we don't really feel strongly one way or the other, maybe we can just start with being a little more informal, like Jamie suggested and like I suggested. And if we have a meeting that blows up in our face and things get out of control, then maybe we address to formalize things right after. But I think I don't have any experience with these types of committees, so I don't really know what to expect.
Can I share the East County Citizens Advisory Board, similar to the other 5 boards across the county? At the end of each agenda item, the statement reads, public participation. Residents and guests are welcome to attend ECAB meetings. At each meeting, the agenda provides an opportunity for residents to address their concerns or make input to the board. That is the rule that guides that advisory committee in terms of public input.
So basically, at each agenda point, they have an opportunity to speak before we vote or move on to the next point.
Yeah.
Is there any limit? Have you ever run into a situation where?
No, we limit it to 2 minutes. 2 minutes. The advisory board is 18 members, 2 hours, and sometimes we have up to about 20 to 30 community people who attend above and beyond the 18. And we always have probably 4/5 members at all meetings. So, yeah.
So that, I guess if we took that approach, maybe it would be non-members are expected to have a chance to voice their opinions during discussions at the end of each agenda item for 2-minute intervals and prior to any vote.
Would we have the opportunity to discuss again after they shared their opinions?
Yeah, sometimes they raise additional issues, but then the chairman, remember every item has a time limit. And so the chair really gets the conversations going, and all meetings, at least 90% of the meetings, do occur within the 2-hour limit.
I would prefer to be able to have like a dialogue with people. I mean, just like how Jeru is participating or other guests in this meeting here. Yeah. Maybe we have some sort of threshold that says like if more than 5 community members show up, then we would like trigger something more formal.
Yeah.
Could I ask a
From
question?
yeah.
Is the advisory committee's role in advising the planning body or the government? Is it the only way in which individuals in the community can advise can get their views through to the planning board or agency or government? Can
No,
people just directly in? They
yes,
can come to you, right, Jamie?
everyone has the right to submit something directly to the planning board and sign up to testify.
So with that in mind, how do you carve out a role for this advisory committee, which makes it focus on its role as an advisory committee, and balance that against individuals who might wish to also, I don't know. It seems to me.
Again, that's the planning board created this group, so the planning board theoretically would be listening to this group more than anyone else. It's a super opinion.
I made a statement earlier as regional director, which I think is more as an advocate for communities. This body is so critical as part of the planning process in Montgomery County. An extension of this body is the ability of this advisory board to be more inclusive, to bring more voices from the community through this body to the planning board. So whatever rules are established, I think they need to be able to answer that fundamental question. How much, through this body, we've really added value both to public participation in the planning process.
I agree, and I think that's why it's important to have a set process that people can read and know that it's, that after each agenda item, there will be discussion times, and, somebody on the committee, either the vice chair or the chair, will coordinate that so that people know their voice will be heard, and it's not just who can raise their hand loudest. So I agree with you.
Can I make a motion that we bring this to a close and finish it at another meeting?
I second that, since I'm still sitting in the office.
I mean, on this point, I think this meeting is an excellent example of why some structure would be helpful.
This has gone on way too long at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we can reflect on this.
We only have one sentence left.
Okay.
Well, I do think that Julia's point, I was going to make it too, is that perhaps one sentence should be added that discusses changing the rules themselves.
Yep. Can you reword that for me again, Julia?
Shoot. I think someone actually responded in a comment with good language. Responded to me. Maybe it was you, Amy, or Kathleen. Yeah, right there.
I want to steal like something. I have to retype.
No, maybe it wasn't that. Oh, I don't know. We can say. I mean, I say a minority of members, 3 members. The committee may revisit and revise what are these called, rules and procedures, at the request of a minority of 3 members and with the agreement of a majority of members.
What was that last bit? The request of at least 3 committee members.
An agreement of a majority. So maybe it's revisit the rule at the request of 3 members and revise at the agreement of the majority.
Yep, sounds good. Thank you.
With the agreement. Yep.
Okay. So does that mean that we are ratifying these in the next one?
Yeah, Amy, the sentence above, the chair is eligible. Is there a difference between the chair is eligible or the chair is authorized?
That's a good question.
I
would
just
say
put
that, and I would also say if, like, what if the chair can't make it to something? They could delegate.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
that's a
that's the
given.
vice.
Device.
And maybe you could say the chair or the acting chair.
Yeah. That's why you have a vice chair. The chair can just delegate.
Okay. All right.
Did
Yeah,
you
I
add?
mean, it's already captured up there where it says vice chair would serve as the function of the chair if the chair is
Yeah.
unable to do so. So you really don't need to
Okay.
to say anything. I agree that we take out eligible, they should be authorized.
Okay. Does that mean we're done?
Is that the end?
How is it the when at what point does the vice chair become the chair? Is that addressed?
Yeah, it is.
It's if they can't make it or if the chair delegates things. Where's the chair? The
Actually,
chair.
it's in the absence of the chair.
Well, I
It's
guess it
actually
actually doesn't say
under
under
the vice
chair. It's
chair.
under his, says it under vice chair.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Guess we could also say and
No, that's
may
fine. I think
delegate.
it's fine. It doesn't
Okay.
have to be crazy formal.
You don't want belt
And we'll
and
get a
suspenders?
chance,
It doesn't have to be bulletproof.
and we'll get a chance to look at this and make any further minor edits before the next meeting, right?
So you're going to send it out as a Google Doc again, Amy?
It is live, and if you go back to the link in your email, it will bring you back to this exact version.
Okay.
Might I suggest a way to conclude the matter on the non-members? You know, as a brief, I think what you could write is that the committee will develop procedures that facilitate the inclusive the voice, something to the effect of to facilitate non-members views to be shared with the committee. Yeah.
What's currently there? We didn't say that
We've got just that they have time that they can speak.
It doesn't
Yeah,
say
yeah.
when.
Yeah, I think you could just
After
say
each agenda item.
It does say after each agenda item. Does it say a time limit?
In 2-minute intervals and prior to any
no,
vote.
you can't set limits on time like that. I think because you don't know, maybe there'll be a matter that requires more than 2 minutes and you will be breaching your rule.
Well, I think that's what George suggested.
Yeah, you need to set time limits. The chair needs to have the authority to shut somebody down.
Right.
Matur, is the non-members the same as Joe Public?
Yes.
Okay.
I reiterate my motion.
Do we just want to call them guests to the meeting rather than non-members? Honored
members of the public, how about?
Honored
Yeah.
guests.
Non-committee
Members of the community or members of the public.
I think in your minutes you indicated guest.
Well, guest sort of implies like somebody invited the person, and they may or may not, but
Yeah. Okay.
So I heard some people want to get rid of the 2-minute intervals section.
I think
I
that
like
you
it.
should. Let me just say, I think the gentleman who spoke about the importance of inclusiveness and that this advisory committee be also able to show that it is channeling the views of the community into the process. It's quite an important matter. And if a community member with technical skills, for example, wishes to inform the committee or writes to the chairman and say, I'd like to make a presentation to the committee on this issue, to share with you specifically how I see it. You can't necessarily say that will be a 2-minute matter. You know, you have to be prepared to treat with such issues or such situations. So I
Well,
don't know
I agree with
that
that, but the chair needs to have a parameter where he can trigger authority and say, we thank you for your opinion. We need to move on to the next individual. Running out of time. So he needs to
yeah,
have
but what
that
I'm
authority. I mean, if we
But
invite a
it's not-
guest,
Or she.
if we invite a
Yeah,
guest
they're on
to
the
present
agenda.
something to us, that's the guest has been invited by us, so we're going to give them as much time as they want.
Yeah, if someone's
present
presenting, that's
they're presenting to us. So that's a completely different type of individual.
Yeah, but suppose you propose the idea that, look, you know, in your meetings that on a proposal that has come forward that is quite controversial or potentially controversial, you've decided that, look, you're going to hold one special meeting ahead of your decisions that you will take to allow for people in the community or who have strong views to actually come and make presentations. You know that 2-minute business don't make any sense then, does it? Yeah. So to me, you want a way in which you broaden the thing, which allows for people to come, but in a prescribed way, which allows it not just about that 2-minute thing, but rather
what if we
the county,
added
it has to be broader.
when the county has public comments and you sign up to testify, you are limited to 2 minutes, period. And they shut you down. So we're just following the exact same principle.
But you can submit something in writing. You can submit something in writing.
That's
so
correct.
Perhaps
Yes.
Allows 3
so let's
minutes.
do that.
But the chair often lets people go longer than 3 minutes if he feels like it.
Right.
Of course. But
So I was going to suggest, can you say
writing?
People making comments, whatever you want to say, are limited to 2 minutes at the discretion of the chair.
And also can submit a written statement for review for later.
Exactly.
Review.
So it's not about non-members having a chance to voice your opinion during discussion. It's broader than that. It's the objective of that bullet is different. It's something more. You need to say. You need to speak to how you're channeling views of people, the public, into this advisory committee. And that bullet point is only a procedure. It needs to be motivated by something more. It needs to say something to the effect that the committee will make an effort to facilitate and develop procedures to facilitate the input of community members or the public, and set rules. And then you can decide operationally afterwards how you're going to set those rules. But I don't think you necessarily want to be so
we already
pedantic
have a
about
set of rules. That's called the Open Committee Act.
The Open Meeting Manual. Yeah, check out the Open Meeting Manual. It's only 62 pages.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
actually
talking about sets all those rules.
Right. I'm actually concerned that myself included are taking up so much airtime that we're not hearing from some of our other members. So I think that we have to, perhaps Jamie can reel us in a little bit next time, but to get the opinions of the other folks stated and that's my closing. That's my closing statement. that we really need to give everybody else time to give their opinion as well.
So I guess just, do we want to, because we have to like officially vote and ratify this, right? So should we have another meeting
Yes.
just to make sure we're all good with it? We could add a bullet on here about, special guests may be invited to give presentations, blah, 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 which then speaks to this idea that that's not going to be limited to 2 minutes, but I don't want to spend a ton of time wordsmithing an additional bullet like that.
I vote that we just leave it as is. We can't spend too much time thinking about theoretical situations. Let's just see what happens and we can amend it if it becomes an issue.
Agreed.
I like that. So are you voting to ratify it in this conversation then?
No, I think we ought to, there's been a lot of discussion. I think we ought to take this document. I think we ought to look at it one more time. And then I think we ought to ratify it on in our next meeting.
Is that are you making a?
I just think that it's 9 o'clock.
I second that. Whatever that was, I second it.
I mean, I think at this point we're all tired. We've talked about it and we've talked about it, and I think now it's time to end.
Right.
So,
So
I'm on board with that as well. I third that.
I'm making a motion that we table it, that we stop for now, and that we come back at the next meeting with everybody looking at it and finalizing their comments.
Do you want me to clean it up and repost it in there, or do you want me to leave it as is?
Can you do both?
Clean it up.
Okay, I'll do a cleaned up one too. You could see the old one, and I'll do a cleaned up one.
Great leadership job tonight.
And then
incredible.
I'm awesome at typing. And then we just need another date for the next one.
So Jamie, you want to send out 3 dates to us, and we'll pick a good one.
Well, last time it was kind of, everybody just kind of said, yeah, a couple weeks from now works. Our original meeting was on a Monday, which leads me to believe that might be better for most people, but
yeah, I can tell you.
I know where we run into the 4th of July holiday. So that's
Yeah,
not.
I'm out
Civic associations is
pretty much all July.
I mean, is next Monday, like the 27th, like too soon?
No, it's good.
I could do next Monday.
I can do next Monday.
I can do I can do it.
All in favor of next Monday, raise your hand or say aye if you're just on the phone.
Is there anyone that can't do next Monday, the 27th? And then we'll talk about 7 or 7:30.
I'm not sure if I can make it, but I'll try to make it.
So I guess we'll do a vote at that time to select the chair and so forth. So we'll pass that down to the next meeting.
Yes, and as well as picking the future meeting dates.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds great.
All right, so it sounds like it's decided that everything that's on this week's agenda will be on next week's agenda.
It feels like there's been no progress, but there has been progress.
No.
All right.
No, I think the process is really important, and I think to get it right is really important. I think everybody did a great job.
Yeah. All right.
And make a motion to adjourn.
I second
that.
Anyone opposed? I don't hear anyone. So good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good
Thank you so
Good
much.
night.
Thank you.
Right.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.